Needs to be abolished, okay? The shame needs to be abolished so much that I'm literally going to come at you with the worst case of bedhead possible, the worst case of just woke up syndrome possible, to say, we need to abolish. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you sound like. I don't care what you feel like. If you are authentically yourself, you should continue being that. And in fact, you should be even more of that. You should be screaming about whatever you are from the rooftops, so as long as it doesn't harm anyone else. That being said, I also think that you should be around and about everywhere, doing your thing, being yourself, not caring so much about the judgments of others, the way in which people happen to think about you, their opinions about your aesthetic, your style, your lifestyle. Who cares? Literally, who cares? It's just an opinion. You probably have some opinions of your own about the way that they do things or the way that they are. Put yourself in their shoes for a moment and you realize it is not all that different. Do your thing. Be yourself. Go out. Who cares? I don't care if you're ugly. I don't care if you're beautiful. I don't care if you're regular. I don't care if you're not so regular. Just do it. Just do it. That's the message. Do not import the concerns because they are not of import. Do not run around and think, oh, 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 I'm so bad. You're not bad. You're so good. Why are you so good? How do I know? Because I just do, okay? Yeah. Ultimately, individuals that make the world an interesting place to be in. If you have something you feel is strange about yourself, something odd, something that other people might not like, it's probably because that thing is pretty cool. And there were people who didn't understand what cool was, or they recognized it and felt afraid, and they wanted to tell you to stop being cool so that there was less competition. Continue to be cool. Even if you're not cool, continue to not be cool, because that is in fact the spirit of cool. You don't need me to tell you. Just stop caring. Just stop caring. Be unabashedly a resident of the strange world. That's what it's about. Fuck shame. Okay, so I was laying down in my bed trying to get to sleep, and I was listening to a bunch of podcasts from the YouTube channel Dreaming Spanish, because they make these long form videos of conversations in the language, and when I can't sleep, it's a good thing to listen to, because technically I'm working without feeling like I'm working, and it helps me get used to more of the patterns in the language, particularly as my vocabulary and grammar advances. I need more content like this because I have all these words and structures just floating around in my head, and it helps to activate them by actually listening to it in context. But I digress. As I was listening to this podcast of these, I guess what some would call conventionally attractive women, I try not to pay attention to that sort of stuff because, I want to, put my eyes solely in one direction. But, from the standpoint of society, that's what these people would be considered. Also, people that have a great degree of charisma in these videos, to hear them say something like, I am chronically online, or I was chronically online before being a great teacher of Spanish. I heard this woman say this and I was just like, bruh, this is who I'm in the camp with? There's people like this now that were extremely successful in real life, and that are to this day, that ended up in the same place as me. This just makes me feel like I'm on stolen land. Like, like us, the autists, the based people, the weird people, we inhabited the internet back in the day. People like this wouldn't be caught dead on here because they would be, they would feel like they were too normal. They didn't want to be weird. There was a shame associated with it. But as the commercialization of the internet happened, everything changed. People started to feel like they could actually post on here, and if they got caught, it wasn't a big thing. It just happened to be everything, the same thing everyone else was doing. Everybody else is on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. You're weird if you're not. Wait, is that fucking spider back, or am I just seeing things again? I think I'm just seeing things again. I hope so. Anyway, is it possible to just like turn my... Man, I'm just seeing shit. Okay. Yeah, there's no spider there. Literally zero. Okay. Turn that light back off. But anyway, um, so you were seen as a weirdo if you were online in the first place back in the day. And one of the things that I always do, when I talk about social media online, is I put social, the word social in social media in square quotes, in scare quotes. Yeah, I put them in quotes for squares. How about that? Squares and straights. Um, I put them in scare quotes because there's nothing actually social about social media, but also at the same time, the fact that it is a social form of media is in fact scary. And so it it warrants the use of scare quotes. Um, the way I use the internet now, I feel like is a lot more it's a lot more in line with what I talk about on here. I'm not on social media. I'm not even on Blue Sky. I was on Blue Sky solely to post my own videos. And I deleted that. Because I thought, I don't like what this represents. I don't want to be on here. I don't want to be part of this club, even though I'm not part of the club. Um, so I'm just not on social media. And that's how it is. You know, I I'm not even on Discord really. Like that platform started out as kind of this place for weird people who played video games, and at the very start it functioned that way. But pretty quickly it morphed into just another Instagram or one of these things filled with the same kinds of people that are all over the main social media sites. People that I have very little in common with, um, people that I don't want to interact with, people that, you know, I would have at least at one point found frustrating. Nowadays, I just find them uninteresting or feel like I'm wasting my time talking to them. They're all over Discord. There used to be more weirdos and outsiders on that platform, but I think a lot of them have either left or they're hard to find. And the way servers are structured in many cases necessitates the shitification of everything there. Not to mention the UI is just terrible, and it's fucking unfree botnet sell all of your information type demon tech, but that's fine. Um, I don't feel that there's any site that's used by the masses of people that is free of the kind of problems that I'm talking about. Needless to say, I don't want to be chronically online. I don't want to be online all the time in the way that these people are. If I am, I want to be educating myself, and I want to be hanging out on, places like Denpa, because that is what the internet used to be. And in my mind, that's what the real internet is, not this strange thing that people have created now for mass consumption. You know, it's like social media companies found out that the internet could be profitable, really profitable, that they could design something that would appeal to the mass of people rather than just, a small group of nerds. And they exploited that. Um, just like how everything that was cool at one point gets taken over by the masses and sterilized and made less cool, they did it to the internet as well. And, it's just shocking to me to see someone like that, out there. And I like these videos, by the way. I love these podcasts. They seem like nice people. But, they're never people that I would meet or want to talk to. They're people I would see, and then it's just another face in the crowd. If I look at all, most of the time I don't look at people when I'm out, you know. Um, that's just how it is. And a lot of these more normie people, you watch these videos or podcasts of them and you enjoy it from a distance, but you would never want to interact with these people. Not because there's anything overtly wrong with them, there's a lot of things good about them, but more so due to just this kind of inherent disconnect that one winds up experiencing when they are truly Denpa, for lack of a better word. Fucking neat. I'm a fucking neat. I don't know shit about fuck. I don't know shit about fuck. I don't know shit about fuck. I'm a neat. That's what I'm about. I'm about living that neat life. I'm about doing whatever I want. I'm about talking about random things. With that being said, I still do have opinions. Look at this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I feel that a lot of my goal on this channel is basically to expose myself. Expose myself in a lot of the strangest and most embarrassing situations, and to document it all for the internet. I think I've sort of treated this as a grand exercise in, at least I hope, I don't want to say humbling oneself, because that's not really what it is, but basically trying to excise the shame from my body. I don't want to feel any shame. There's this popular meme online by people I think that are misappropriating the terms or just don't know what they're talking about, who say that we need to bring back shame. And they say it in response to people engaging in just generally immoral behavior. But I think the thing that people fail to realize about these individuals that are behaving this way is that the principal thing, at least, that prevented them from doing that in the past was not shame. It was how likely they were to get away with doing the thing. And as time has gone on, the types of people who would behave in these ways have gotten away with more and more of their behavior, and in fact, they get rewarded for it. There are incentives that exist on social media, for example, for behaving in very bad ways. And of course, this ultimately impacts the mass of people because they see those people online getting rewarded for behaving in bad ways, and those behaviors become normalized. They start to see them in a different way. This is all as a product of propaganda. But needless to say, the people who have those impulses in the first place will dare to engage in them, often regardless of whether or not shame is a component. But needless to say, shame alone will not dissuade them. What you really need to attack is the incentive structures that exist in society that normalize certain behaviors, that get people to behave in certain ways. And then on top of that, there does need to be sort of more of a society-wide reckoning with you know um, behaviors that negatively impact other people. We need to be having conversations about how we can be more open to and understanding of the needs of the people around us, more empathetic to their concerns. Um, and that's a difficult thing to do individual by individual, but it needs to be prioritized. And I think, rather than treating it like a problem with individuals, which I think in many cases it is, but rather than treating it at an individual level, I think what we need to be doing is focusing um, on incentives for, um, how we can actually encourage the behavior that we want to see in society. And I don't think we really see incentives for like most things right now. I mean, just think about how often you see obesity. There's no financial incentive for getting exercise. There's no tax on sugary foods that make people less likely to consume them. And there's no city besides like one or two in the whole country where you can readily walk around with ease and are actually incentivized to do so because it would be easier to get around that way than driving in a car. That kind of thing, for the most part, doesn't exist. Now, there's a couple, examples of what some might refer to as real cities in the US, but they are few and far between. If you want to measure a quality of a city, look at how many of its participants use public transit. If the majority use public transit, it's probably a good place to live, at least nominally better than a lot of the places that are offered in the world, but I digress. Um, Without these incentives in place that sort of nudge people toward behaving in more desirable ways, people will tend to behave in ways that are not desirable. Now, of course, everybody has a choice. If you expose yourself to the right information and you make the right choices about your own life, you can escape from these unhealthy tendencies that are in some ways incentivized in society. You can escape from the botnet, as I often talk about on my channel. You can escape from all sorts of things. But, um, when we're talking about like policies that impact the entire society, you can't really expect individual reason will prevail to be like a guiding principle that's going to lead to the best outcomes for like public health and the overall morality of the society. You can't expect sanity to prevail when you're not creating the incentives in society for people to behave in the right ways, when you're not nudging them in the right direction. Now, I do think, in spite of how much moral decay we have in our world today, there still are quite a few people who, due to some basic biological instincts with like empathy and stuff like that, they will not behave in a lot of the ways that we see online or elsewhere. They just kind of keep to themselves, and that's not really due to shame as much as it is just kind of humanizing and individualizing the people that you come across, kind of seeing a bit of yourself in them, seeing a bit of your own humanity in them. That doesn't have a lot to do with incentives as much as it is kind of just a human trait. Of course, there are societies that try to disincentivize that, and vice versa. It still sort of plays into the incentives thing that I'm talking about, but at the same time, it's kind of just one of those natural things. It's a natural phenomenon that you're going to see a lot of, and I think, um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's one of these strange things It's one of these strange things. Um, Ultimately, at the end of the day, um, people gotta be nice. We gotta love each other and all that stuff. But also, we need to not be ashamed of ourselves. We need to be more shameless in terms of how we present ourselves, in terms of who we are, etc. It is not a sense of shame that prevents me from being mean to people or doing things that happen to harm other people. I am axiomatically against causing harm to others. I think it is wrong to cause harm to others. In fact, I think that is the only way that you can measure the morality of an action. I don't think it's possible to measure it with any other framework unless you believe in God, which obviously we all know does not exist. And so, um, I believe very strongly in the idea that we should seek to um, behave in ways that are desirable, that we would like for other people to mimic, and that those behaviors in question, should be gentle, that they should be kind, that they should be accommodating of those around us. It's a belief that I've always had. Not to say that I've always lived up to it, but I've always strived to do so. And I think that is ultimately the way things ought to be. It's like I've said many times, we gotta love each other. Um, and I believe very strongly in that. But I also think it's really the only way forward in a secular world, um, and that shouldn't be treated sort of as a difficult thing to overcome or to arrive at, but rather this potential chance to, for the first time, truly reach a kind of liberation, a kind of brotherhood of man, which was previously impossible um, under religious societies, ones that sought to divide people based on scripture, that sought to dehumanize and kill people based on scripture. We have the potential now to go beyond that and to um, instead try to build a society that um, that looks at what's going on and says, how can we improve the outcomes for all life on Earth, and most importantly for humanity, through a recognition of our shared humanity, through a recognition of the things that we all need, peace, security, um, abundance, these sort of things. And how can we work together in order to reach those outcomes? But it doesn't just start, from the top above, producing massive amounts of, you know, I don't know, um, government welfare programs or something. It also comes from the ways that we individually treat each other, which is also influenced by the economy, the society and culture, etc. And so there has to be sort of a multi-pronged, multifaceted approach that we take, to not just, deprogram a lot of the very dehumanizing kind of violent tendencies that are emerging in society today as a product of the internet, as a product of how alienated people are at their jobs, but also we need to be um, actively promoting a kind of culture, a kind of new culture that seeks to put collaboration at the forefront, cooperation at the forefront, rather than competition, which has historically been the law of the jungle rather than society.